Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, giving you an in-depth overview of what has happened in Ukraine, why you must oppose this fascist clique in Kiev, why the United States must butt out. Not one penny, not one soldier, nothing. Nix for this fascist gang of adventurers in Kiev, and do not get into an antagonized relationship with Russia. It's time for Mad Dog Kerry of Skull and Bones, and indeed his Portuguese fascist wife, to go home, disappear, get out. We've had enough. And indeed, warmongers of the Democratic Party, butt out, or you'll go the way of LBJ, and worse. It'll be much worse this time around. So, this is an important moment. This is going to rankle for quite a while. We have Laurent Fabius, Foreign Minister of France, the Quai d'Orsay, Frank-Walter Steinmeier of the Auswärtiges Amt in Berlin, and Sikorsky of Poland. They pledged their honor to guarantee a mediation deal, and we just went through the provisions, and then within 12 hours or less, within 3 hours, you've got fascist leaders at the podium in Euromaidan, that famous cynosure of fascist attention worldwide. They begin saying, Yanukovych out by 10 o'clock the next morning, because demoralized, betrayed, and essentially fearful, the Berkut riot police, the army have all disappeared. They've left Yanukovych. He betrayed them. He wouldn't support them. They wouldn't support him. It's clear. So they begin taking over the presidential palace, and sometime between the Friday and the Saturday, probably in the night between Friday the 21st and Saturday the 22nd, Yanukovych flees. He's out of the picture. And from that point on, you've got to assume that everything the parliament does is because there's a gun-toting fascist hooligan with a knife and a slingshot and guns and everything else behind every deputy, every member of the Ukrainian Rada. So the deal collapses. Now, this will not be forgotten by Russia. This is betrayal. This is intolerable, right? Because these are diplomats. Their word is supposed to be worth something. From now on, Fabius, Steinmeier, Sikorsky, they're exposed as liars, and this will be resented more than what the West, NATO, and the U.S. did to Libya. Remember, the March resolution in the Security Council was to defend civilians, and it became regime change and even kill Gaddafi and break up the country and kick out the Chinese, kick out the Russians, and on and on. That has not been forgotten. So from now on, to talk of trust, reset, normal relations, it doesn't mean anything. And it's the fault of those European merchants of treachery that have allowed this to happen. So, a Friday evening, Yarosh, Parasiuk, and Lashko with his pitchfork, his trident, I guess, comes forward and says, 10 o'clock, he's got to be out. And indeed, he was out before 10 o'clock. Yanukovych had fled. And Timoshenko makes her tear-jerking sob sister performance. And not a peep from any of those foreign ministries or any other NATO foreign ministry. Now, just to show what the new regime is, what do they do immediately? On the 23rd of February, the Sunday, Rada says, up to now, Russian, Romanian, and Hungarian can be official languages in certain parts of Ukraine. Right? We're willing to, realize that there are people who don't understand, don't speak Ukrainian. Ukrainian, of course, from our point of view, more or less a dialect of Russian, but Russian, Romanian, and Hungarian as possible official languages. No more. Only Ukrainian. If you're put on trial, it's going to be in Ukrainian. Your taxes are in Ukrainian, and all the rest. The other thing that they do immediately is to begin groveling for the International Monetary Fund. This cabinet, we're going to get to them now in a minute, the cabinet comes forward, and they've got to be subjected, it's like the Roman arena, right, to the thumbs up or thumbs down of the Euromaidan. And it's very interesting. When, for example, Yatsenyuk, the prime minister, right? Remember, Yatsenyuk of this Fatherland Party, a stooge of Timoshenko, right? Baktibshina Party, Fatherland, Timoshenko man. Yatsenyuk was Nuland's favorite, right? She's the one, she wanted him as prime minister because of his extensive economic knowledge. Well, what does that turn out to be? He's going to go to the IMF. And yesterday, Madame Lagarde of the International Monetary Fund confirmed that Ukraine has officially asked for help. They say they need 35 billion euros of help, 37 billion euros of help. Yats says that the government will now have to take unpopular positions. Unpopular. He says, in effect, this entire group of ministers that are coming forward now, despite the fact that they've been approved by the fascist gaggle there in Maidan, they're going to have to go on a kamikaze mission because their austerity and rigor and desire to save money, that's going to be so unpopular that they're going to end up as kamikazes. I don't know if he knows what he's saying, but he may be right. That may be exactly how he ends up. The IMF. Now, what's the IMF going to demand? Well, what did they demand before? The Russian government, thanks to a deal signed between Timoshenko and Putin, sells gas to Ukraine at something below the world market price. And the Ukrainian government, as a subsidy, as a help to impoverished Ukrainians, sells that gas at an even lower price. So there's a subsidy on the gas. It's like the Egyptian bread subsidy and similar things in Syria and in Libya. Indeed, the IMF doesn't like that subsidy. So one of the demands that blew up the deal back in November was the European Union and the IMF said to Ukraine, you want a rapprochement with the European Union, you've got to abolish your gas subsidy and radically increase the price of natural gas in the cold, unforgiving, merciless Ukrainian winter. Great. And the IMF demands that killer austerity be exercised against old people, pensions and health care, against children, education, health services, and others. And we'll see now exactly what they demand this time. But last time it was those killer austerity, genocidal austerity points that blew up the deal, which, of course, Yanukovych was perfectly within his rights to do. And as a matter of fact, he always stressed, I didn't end it. I just I postponed it. I kept it open. You know, now it's Yatsenyuk is going to be much weaker. Let's see what he comes up with. You've also got the new economics minister, Sheremetyev, an ideologue, right, neoliberal or Austrian ideologue. He's been part of telling the Malaysian government what to do, and I can't imagine he had anything good to contribute there. So, when you look at it, generally speaking, these are IMF puppets, and of course they're associated with the main IMF puppet, who's Timoshenko. So that would be Prime Minister Yatsenyuk and President Turchinov, both of them saying, we're going to be very unpopular. We're going to impose killer austerity. Back in a minute. So Kiev is groaning under the Volksangel. This is now an IMF austerity regime enforced by fascists and neo-Nazis. How about that? Something new under the sun, I guess. Remember, the rapprochement of the Nazis with the CIA goes back to Allen Dulles and even earlier, right? The OSS, Donovan, but above all, the secret surrender of SS General Karl Wolff in Italy, masterminded by Allen Dulles. That book, The Secret Surrender, 1966. Take a look. If you look at Russia, it's long been the case, and I've stressed it, that you can be a Nazi, and as long as you're anti-Putin, you're a democratic force. And that would include this Limonov, right, the National Bolshevik. That's a brand of Nazism, I guess you could say, the great friend of Garry Kasparov. Navalny has a very strong, anti-Caucasus, anti-Chechen. He's a racist. He's a right-winger. He's, calling for violence, appears with guns in his video. And indeed, the Pussy Riot, these charming ladies are racist, anti-Chechen, anti-immigrant, extreme right-wingers. That's who you have. And we also have to thank, if we now have this confrontation set up between the United States and Russia, this was made possible by Assange, wonderful Assange, allowing the Arab Spring to get going, right, destabilizing Tunisia and Syria and Egypt above all, with these revelations, right? And then with Snowden becoming an apple of discord, right? You roll in the apple and they fight over it. And Snowden has allowed that to happen. Latest news on Snowden is that he represents the CIA attempting to prevent the NSA from scooping up all the information about CIA covert operations. So in addition to the other dimensions of Snowden, to try to keep the left libs in a status of drooling passivity, Snowden represents the CIA asserting itself against the NSA. So you're getting caught up. Left liberals, congratulations. You're part of the CIA faction against the NSA. Great. Way to go. Way to spend your life as a dupe by being a left liberal. And Gnome and Michael Moore and the Naomi, at least the Naomi Klein, part of this. All right, now let's look at who's who. The New York Times this morning is trying to tell us that, this cabinet, they're such good people. And we heard this on NPR, right? National Pentagon Radio, the Diane Rehm show. We're told that there's this guy, Musiy, M-U-S-I-Y. He was a medic. He was the field hospital for the protesters and all this. So we got some, cool people, some really cool people. There's an actor called Nishuk who sings these songs and everything. Isn't that wonderful? Sings the national anthem. Let's just look at it. The big winner, as I suggested before, is Timoshenko, the gas princess, kleptocrat, IMF, NATO agent, the dyed blonde, as we've now seen, on the road to getting the Academy Award on Sunday for her sob sister appearance. She doesn't want to be prime minister. She wants to be president or something better than that. Right? Maybe they'll reinstate the Grand Duchess of Kiev or whatever it is. But Timoshenko has taken all the marbles with the help of Victoria Nuland. Turchinov, the acting president until May, is a fatherland party, a stooge of Timoshenko. And Yatsenyuk, the prime minister, also fatherland party stooge of Yatsenyuk, of Timoshenko. Big loser, Klitschko and the Udar party, right? The punch party of the punch-drunk, brain-damaged Palooka Klitschko, lives in Germany, lives in the United States, right? Complete foreigner, heavyweight champion, but incapable of putting some words together. So his people are frozen out. It's obviously, as I tweeted very early on, the thing is going to be a collision between the Klitschko Udar forces and the Timoshenko. I should mention, for Yatsenyuk, when he was introduced to the Maidan fascists, the call went up, give him a bullet in the head. And I guess that refers back to a speech he once gave, saying, if I have to take a bullet in the head, I'll take it. Well, in this case, they're offering it to him. Then we have the Svoboda party. This is racist and xenophobic. They hate Jews. They hate Poles. They hate Germans. They hate Russians. The Muscovites or Moskali. Chanibok Alyech, he came out sort of in the middle. Some of his people are in the government. Let's see if we can figure out who from his party is in the government. Let's see. I think we've got. this guy, Sich, S-Y-C-H, Alexander Sich, it's Alexander with an O, Alexander Sich, S-Y-C-H. This is interesting. He's a cabinet minister. He wants to ban all abortion, okay? And he says if women get raped, it's because it's their own fault. And he says if you clean up your lifestyle, you won't get raped. So the war on women, and remember, this is not a coincidence, that fascism is characterized by misogyny. Fascists hate women. We've seen this, right? This is a well-known characteristic. Then we've got, so Svoboda is in there, but then there's also the right sector. I think Avakov, the interior minister, is from Svoboda. He is the criminal who was arrested in Italy, the jailbird from Rome. And then we get to the right sector. Now, this is this guy, Jarosz. This is one of several candidates to play the role of Ernst Röhm, the brown shirt leader, and this Muzicho, Sasha Bili, the terrorist who went to work in Chechnya on the side of the Saudi-backed guerrilla fighters, right, along with Basayev and Doku Umarov and the rest of them, right? Basayev being the CIA. Who else do we have here? Kvit. Sergei Kvit is the education minister. This is an intellectual fascist. He's from the right sector. He's now the education minister. Oh, my God. Then there's an anti-corruption minister, Tatiana Chernovil, who has various nefarious stories. Her claim to fame is that she was beaten up, so therefore she's projected into power. Some of this stuff is rube bait. You see, they get the IMF agent at the top, and then they put some window dressing around it in the form of people, who sort of shared in the privations of the Maidan, and others. We got the gas minister is Prodan, which apparently means that he's sold out. Sold. Comrade Sold is now the gas minister. Bulatov is also getting a ministerial fauteuil, and this is the guy who claimed that he was beaten up and had his ear cut off. So we got a couple of the martyr types in there, I think probably as rube bait. So that's what we're left with. Yanukovych was never legally impeached. Now, let's just think of a couple of other important items. There is a problem with natural gas, but remember, the ability of Ukraine to shut off the natural gas to Western Europe is now diminished because of the Nord Stream pipeline, which goes directly from Russian territory all the way over to Germany. They will not be able to cut off the natural gas in the way that they could have done it before. The Democratic Party, butt out, or you'll go the way of LBJ, and worse. It'll be much worse this time around. So this is an important moment. This is going to rankle for quite a while. We have Laurent Fabius, Foreign Minister of France, the Quai d'Orsay, front fascist gang of adventurers in Kiev, and do not get into an antagonized relationship with Russia. It's time for Mad Dog Kerry of Skull and Bones, and indeed his Portuguese fascist wife, to go home, disappear, get out. We've had enough. And indeed, warmongers of Walter Steinmeier of the Auswärtiges Amt in Berlin, and Sikorsky of Poland. They pledged their honor to guarantee a mediation deal, and we just went through the provisions, and then within 12 hours or less, within 3 hours, you've got fascist leaders at the podium in Euromaidan, that famous cynosure of fascist attention worldwide. They begin saying Yanukovych out by 10 o'clock the next morning because demoralized, betrayed, and essentially fearful, Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, giving you an in-depth overview of what has happened in Ukraine, why you must oppose this fascist clique in Kiev, why the United States must butt out. Not one penny, not one soldier, nothing. Nix for this